May 15th, 2023. Room 317 is a hellscape of blood with no apparent source. Our team, Haley, Kaysen, and myself, Ethan, immediately try to look for clues. Our first notice is that there appears to be a long, seemingly blonde hair. Now, we don't know a lot of blonde teachers at this school, but we do know of a couple significant ones. Miss Sandys and Miss Parker. Immediately, we try to link them to the crime. To start, we interrogated Sandys, followed by Parker. Both of them acted in a way that implied that they knew more than they were letting on, so we investigated. We requested information on their email history, leading us to be informed that Nelson was also in on it. After requesting his email history as well, we were left with a problem to decipher. What is the answer to life, the universe, and everything? It sounded awfully familiar, so we looked it up, and what we found was essential to solving the case. The answer was 42, and it was associated with a book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. We went to the library to find this book, and on page 42 we found a strange note. It read 3212 20 26 13. While we couldn't be certain it looked an awful lot like a locker combination, we went to locker 3212, and sure enough, that combo worked, and nothing could have prepared us for what awaited within the locker. Within the bounds of the locker was the severed head of one Mrs. Ima Body. We were stunned at this discovery, but we had to continue. Now that we knew that there was an association to the case from our three main suspects, we were able to build a story of what happened. Emails between them began to make more and more sense, and we had to act fast. We started by investigating the search histories of our primary suspects, where we found that Nelson likely fed the non-head part of Mrs. Body to pigs, and that both Parker and Sandys looked up cures for cyanide, but only Parker looked up ways to get it. In addition, Parker was also looking into Ecuador, but that doesn't come into play quite yet. At this point, there was nothing we could be certain of. All we had was circumstantial evidence and a body, at least until this happened.
Cheating on her with Mrs. Body, so she wanted to have her dead, but she didn't want to do it. So so she blackmailed me, and it wasn't enough for me to kill her. And she was blackmailing me because I don't actually have a teaching license, so she was threatening to kill me. So she blackmailed me. It wasn't enough, so she poisoned me with the sodium cyanide. And in order to get the antidote, I had to kill Mrs. Body. So I got the gun from Mr. Nelson, and then we went into Guthrie's room, and I shot Mrs. Body, and Mrs. Body stabbed me with a knife as she was going down, and then Mr. Nelson cleaned it up.
We now had a full confession from Sandys, and we had more information on what truly happened. We now knew assuredly that Nelson had cleaned up the crime scene, and that there was a gun hiding within Nelson's room. We also knew that Parker had poisoned Sandys, so those were two large things to look for. We started by getting a search warrant for Nelson's room, where we found the gun with Nelson's print slightly from hiding it after Sandys used it. In Parker's room, we found vials, one of which contained cyanide, which we were more than certain had been used to poison Sandys. We now had enough evidence to arrest all three of our suspects. Starting with Sandys, we continue by arresting...
This because I'm going to talk quick and I'm doing it once.
Yep.
Okay. So on the Monday in question, I did leave school at 3:45. I came back to work on some things that I forgot about. I was working at my desk slightly before 5:30. I noticed Mrs. Sandys going down the hallway. A short time later, I heard a loud noise in Dr. Guthrie's room. It sounded like a bang. When I went to check into Dr. Guthrie's room, there wasn't anybody in the room except for Mrs. Body, and she was dead. I was worried, and I wanted to go check on Mrs. Sandys, make sure it wasn't an accident, that she wasn't hurt. But I was worried about there being a crime scene, so I checked the hallway, covered the camera, put the body on the cart, put the body in the locker, put the cart back. Noticed a gun sitting out, so I picked that up and hid it in my room where nobody would ever find it. I went back in, tried to clean up a little bit more, decided that was a terrible idea, went back to my desk, shut stuff off, left to go see if I could find Mrs. Sandys. That is my story.
Yeah, thank you.
There you go, you're very welcome.
We now had two confessions linking the three suspects to the crime, and all that was left was to arrest Parker. We had come so far, we had arrested Sandys for the murder of Ima Body, and Nelson for the obstruction of justice. All that remained was to take out Parker for conspiracy murder and attempted murder. But when we reached her room, a terrible surprise awaited. Parker was gone, and all that remained was a poorly spelled postcard from Ecuador. We had taken too long, and justice was the price we paid. We were so close to avenging Ima Body, but we had failed her, just like Sandy's had 2 weeks prior.